Here's the 411, folks.
What's good, everyone, and welcome back to the studio. I'm Pat, and this is the 411 podcast. To my right is my friend Michael Quattromani.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, first of all, welcome back, everyone. It's a little different this week. As you may notice, there is a
vacant spot.
Separating me and Mike. Our great friend Neil Latello is not going to be continuing to do the podcast. We're going to miss him very much, but new announcement, new breakthrough. A new member of the 411 will be announced next week. You'll have to tune in and see.
Yeah.
He's a good friend of ours, so I'm ready to get into it. Mike,
he will make a great addition to
absolutely
the formidable 411 podcast.
Mike, how you doing, man?
Fantastic.
No complaints?
Really great. Obviously, I'm already missing Neil, but
absolutely.
It's going to be... I'm excited. It's going to be a really good podcast. It's the first one we're reporting on, active news.
We're back.
We're back. We are back. This is the official 4-1 back.
We're back. This is real. This is real stuff. Season 1, and to hop right into what we're getting into today. Season 1 starts 3 days, 4 days.
Yeah. I mean, really 2 days because Thursday night football.
Unreal.
So we're recording this on Tuesday night. I'm not sure when it'll be uploaded.
So first thing we definitely want to get into is Patriots Dolphins. Then we're going to transition into a little fantasy. We asked you guys to compare some players, and you wanted our picks. And then to finish it off, we're going to be talking a little Leonard Fournette, his move to the Buccaneers, and how we think that's going to affect the offense, and how much weight he's going to hold in Tampa Bay. So let's get into it, Mike. Week 1, we have Patriots versus Dolphins, and I am so excited to talk about relevant news. Take it away, Mike.
Yeah, so we finally made it to the regular season. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back.
We made it.
I feel like we've said it 100 times already, but we'll probably be saying it more and more as the podcast goes on. After an instantly forgettable year that was 2020, we have football. Patriots open up the season versus Miami. Yeah, right?
Fingers crossed.
Open up the season versus Miami this year at Gillette Stadium, which is going to look a little different this year with no fans. Mm-hmm. But the Patriots open as 6.5-point favorites. Which I really have nothing to compare to because no one knows how this team is going to play this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't say that 6.5 is too much or too little because this Patriots team could go 12-4.
It's a lot of questions.
5-11.
And you know what? I want to talk about that. First of all, week 1, we made it. I'm so excited. I want to start there. I want to start with the question marks with Cam Newton. I think that's the place that every single Patriots fan has to start, and where we need to start off this podcast. The first being Cam. And as simple as we can put it, the Patriot debut. You know what I mean? We've never seen this guy play in a Patriots uniform.
I think the reason that we're kind of starting with Cam Newton in the question mark around whether he's going to be good is because the quarterback position has just been stable for the last 20 years. The defense.
This is something that we haven't seen in our lifetime.
I mean, the defense has been top 5. It's been number 1. It's also been bottom 5. I mean, we've seen a good defense and a bad defense for the Patriots. We've seen good receivers. We've seen bad receivers. Good running backs, bad. Go on and on.
Right.
But we've never seen a name other than Tom Brady starting.
And it's new, and it's something we have to adjust to. On that note, I want to talk about the Patriot offense. I really do believe that this team will. I'm going to rephrase that. This offense will end up they will be successful.
I think it'll be better than last year. I'm not sure if it's going to be necessarily successful. I can't say that yet.
I do think they're going to be successful. It's going to take some time to get there. I do not think that this team will come out slinging week 1.
Because I think that this season, in this shortage of preseason games and no training camp, or no OTA, it's going to favor a team like the Saints, who have been doing the same thing for years. Ravens now, who have been doing the same thing for years. Teams that really haven't brought in a whole lot of players over the offseason. A team like the Patriots, or even the Buccaneers, I mean, they've brought in 8 or 9 different starters.
Too many.
And a team like we're going to get into, the Dolphins, who have brought in 4 new starters on defense, along with a top 5 pick.
We're going to get a lot into that. So I want to just talk about training camp for the Patriots, because I think a lot of interesting things have happened in training camp, and I want to fill anybody in watching that isn't aware of this. Okay, I'm sure most people have heard, but Cam Newton was named a captain, and I think that tells you a lot about the way Cam Newton plays football and the impact.
I don't know if it says more about that, or it says more about Bill Belichick trying to say that Cam Newton's the real deal, and he,
saying Cam Newton's the real deal, he should have just announced him as the starter, and he did. That would be saying he's the real deal.
No.
Announcing him as a captain.
Everybody expected him to beat out Stidham. I don't think that would have really declared him to be the real deal. I honestly don't even think naming him captain does. I mean, Stephon Gilmore's not a captain.
fair.
Julian Edelman's not a captain, but they're still studs.
They're still
still the best players on
I think it
their
shows,
respective
and
sides.
I think it almost proves my point. I think it shows you he's a leader.
Yeah.
He's the leader. You know what I mean? And it's Bill
And that's something
Belichick.
that Bill Belichick never gives praise for, but he has been giving praise
Exactly.
for being a leader.
And actually, the second thing I wanted to say about training camp, me and Michael talked about. A little guy named Gunnar Olszewski is slowly emerging, perhaps as the number 2 wide receiver in New England. He is lined up in training camp behind Julian Edelman for drills almost every single day, gotten plenty of praise from the organization, teammates. Stephon Gilmore has come out and said that he is, quote, fearless. I like the sound of this guy.
I do too.
I really do.
I mean, there obviously every year you have like camp stars who just perform and then you never hear their name
And
in
then
the
you never
regular
hear them
season. I hope that's not Gunnar, because I mean he's one hell of a story.
And looking up, obviously I knew who he was, but I really wanted to, for this podcast, really get into like who this guy really is. Looking at his takes, he reminds me a lot of Edelman.
Yeah.
I gotta say, he's a small guy. He's in the slot. He's relatively short for the
I found
NFL.
this word probably about 7 months ago on the podcast. He's gritty.
He's gritty. He's
Gritty.
a gritty guy. He's short for the NFL at about 6 feet and is very successful with horizontal routes. The only thing I would say, N'Keal Harry could take over as the deep threat. He is that deep threat because that puts it 2 slots. Would they want Harry as the deep threat? But sometimes I go back on that because Harry's predominantly a red zone receiver. They put Harry in there when they're at the 10-yard line and they hoist it up to Harry and he's giant, so he catches it for the
He's
touchdown.
kind of like Gronk in that regard.
In that kind of sense, someone that Newton can toss it up just like that. You know what I mean? In the end, I do think Olszewski could get the spot. I do. Is it crazy? Maybe. Who else do they have? They cut Sanu, and I think we've talked about that since
Yeah,
the
we haven't
podcast.
talked about the...
Cut Sanu.
Yeah. I'm happy they cut Sanu because he was making like the 6th most money on the team.
Opens
which
a
just
ton of cap space.
no sense to me at all. So I'm
Right.
kind of happy they cut Sanu. If he was going to be underperform, then why keep him on the roster?
Exactly.
I think that you want to start fresh this year and you want to cut everyone that you don't think is going to perform well. So I think that's kind of what they're doing right now, is cutting him.
One thing I want to talk about too is the Dolphins' offense. I think let's compare these two offenses straight up. Last time we saw these teams, it was really what kind of blew them in the playoffs. A Week 17 loss was the last time we've seen them. We're going to be playing them again Week 1.
They lost a first round bye by losing.
I still can't believe that. Since then, the Dolphins have added Van Noy, Breida, Jordan Howard, and Tua. He's not starting, but Tua.
Fitzpatrick gets the nod for week 1.
They're on the rise.
But one thing that does scare me.
Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki.
I know. But one thing that really does scare me though.
On paper, this team sounds okay.
The Patriots lost 9 starters from last season. Whether it was to opting out or trades or cuts.
That's something that
signing
makes me shiver a little bit.
9
Not gonna
starters.
lie.
It's almost half of the team.
And that makes me uneasy naturally.
That
Do you know what I
scares
mean?
me a lot. I think this game is really going to tell us how well these guys mesh together because this is going to be a new offense. This is going to tell
Something
me a
that
lot.
we have never seen before.
It does help that during this filling out stage, the Dolphins are also fighting for the last place in the division. I don't think that this team is going to be fighting for anything more than that.
Absolutely not.
And I think that, I said it before, I think this new season's going to favor the team that has been doing the same thing for years, and a team like Miami who Pat just rattled off all the players they just signed. It's going to really be a figuring out point for a team like the Dolphins, a team like the Patriots. I just think the Patriots, Bill Belichick versus Brian Flores, this team is just better.
See, when I look at these two offenses, I actually think that they're relatively similar at these 2 points, just with the
If you
questionability.
compare personnel, I think they both have good running games.
You take-
no one that's too proven.
You take a questionable quarterback in Fitzpatrick, and in some sense, a questionable quarterback again. You really don't know how these guys are going to play.
I still think Newton's better though.
So, of course, Newton's better. I completely agree with that, but there's still a little bit of question.
And wide
in both
receivers,
those
I
spots.
mean, is Preston Williams going to be the receiver that people have been hyping him up to be for years now? Devontae Parker, obviously, the clear-cut #1 receiver.
And they're similar in that way, with one solid receiver, but not a lot of big names after that. Devontae Parker, Julian Edelman. Here's why I think the Patriots prevail. With an offense like this, they're going to be trying a lot of different things. You know what I mean? They're going to be trying this and this, especially come week 1. Meaning that it'll come to predominantly third downs. I think on both sides of the field. The Dolphins are 5th worst in third down completions, and the icing on the cake, they have the worst offensive line ranked
The
in
only thing
football.
that stinks
Last.
is that the Patriots don't have a very good pass rush.
And that
they
is
lost
a
a
good
lot
point.
of their pieces from last year. So that's going to be, one of those give and take moments.
But here's the question with the offensive line. How are you protecting Fitzpatrick, but I think eventually a very injury-prone quarterback in Tua?
Yeah.
There's a lot of question marks there.
And that's one of the things where you have to think that's kind of similar to Tampa Bay, but instead of injury-riddled, you have old.
And that's the
Tampa
problem.
Bay has a bottom 5 offensive line.
And you know what? Yin yang. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Injury-prone, old.
It's comparable.
Kind of the same severity when it comes to using that offensive line to protect that guy in the slot.
I absolutely agree with that.
Do you know what I mean? I think this game starts very close, but I think the Pats pull away second half, the 20-7 final score.
I think Cam Newton's going to have a golden opportunity. I mean, the Dolphins gave up the 7th most passing yards over the league last season. Newton's going to be able to show out in his debut in a Pats uniform. I think the Patriots are going to turn to a run-heavy scheme early in the season, especially versus the Dolphins. I think that's going to be more like Michelle because those are the two familiar faces that we've seen on this offense. David Harris was placed on IR, which means that when he's placed before the season, he's going to miss only 3 games this year to start the first 3 games
Just
of the
a quick
season.
question for you, Mike.
And Miami did give up the 6th most running yards over the season last year.
There you go.
2 7th and 6th favors the Patriots dramatically.
Who gets more rushing yards? Who has more rushing yards at the end of the season, Michelle or White?
Oh, if you were to say Michelle or Harris, I think it's a real toss-up because Harris, if you didn't know, is having an outstanding camp. He's like the standout for the training camp so far.
But once again, like you said, sometimes those guys don't turn out to be very good.
I agree with that. But
I also have my eye on him, I agree.
Overall yards, I think James White is going to take the crown there. I don't think Michelle is. I think he's a whiff. I think for a first-round draft pick at number 31, which they got, at 31 they got him. I think it's a whiff. I think the Patriots struck out on him. I mean, people say, oh, well, what about the 2018 playoff run? He was great. He was, but people also forget about Rex Burkhead. Rex Burkhead, that offensive line is the...
There are always going to be running backs that have freaky postseasons or crazy games. Like, take...
C.J. Anderson for the Rams, even. He was phenomenal.
Am I right? Raheem Mostert went off. It was Mostert.
It was
NFC Championship.
200-yard games.
Ridiculous. Like,
I think Sony Michel was just that
playoff
guy. I think it was just the product of a really good offensive line. Rex Burkhead, for one game, averaged 9 rushing yards per game in the playoffs, which is unheard of. But he never gets any,
Gets any praise.
For that. So I think that Michelle kind of gets overhyped for that. He had a very down year last year. I like David Harris to step up into that role, and I think James White is the perfect third down back in a contract year where he is up at the end of the season.
Final score prediction.
I have the Patriots winning 24-17 to start off the season. I don't think Miami's going to be much of a challenge, especially when the Patriots, I like I said before, this is going to favor the team that brings back the most players from last year. And both these teams are in poor positions, but I like coaching. And I think Bill Belichick is obviously the better coach, so Patriots get my nod.
And just to wrap up, just kind of what Michael said about this game, I think these are two teams that are trying to figure themselves out. I really, really do. I think the Patriots are more put together than the Dolphins are, just skill-wise, like you said, returning players. I do think the Patriots prevail 20-7. All right, on to the next topic, Mike. So you guys have asked, given us, for fantasy football, you've given us 2 guys, and you have us decide who we think is going to outperform the other in fantasy. So first up...
just for all intents and purposes, if you're still drafting, you haven't had your draft yet, or it's coming up in a few days, players that, if you're considering these 2, here's the player you should draft ahead of the other. I'm not saying the other player is bad, but if you're put to the task of which player you'd rather pick, then we're going to tell you which one we'd rather pick.
So, first question we have is Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes. So,
I think it's a pretty clear answer.
And we're going to flip in 3, 2...
I've got Patrick Mahomes.
And I have Lamar Jackson. Mike, talk to me. Talk to me, my friend.
I don't think either of us are any stranger to disagreeing with each other. So
absolutely not.
That's all right. Patrick Mahomes, look, the thing that kind of sums it up for me is he didn't lose any pieces over the offseason. Actually, he gained one in a first-round draft pick in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who''s really going to open up the offense.
Who'd the Ravens lose?
Huh?
Who'd the Ravens lose?
The Ravens lost to Hayden Hurst. Not too much of a loss, but look, I think the drafting of J.K. Dobbins is in the early rounds. I think
and they had J.K. Dobbins, which is what Lamar needed.
Yeah, but it's another running threat to an already run-heavy team.
I'm saying strictly fantasy-wise, Lamar Jackson performed like I've never seen before.
But I think you also need to remember that Patrick Mahomes was pretty close to Lamar Jackson at points, and he missed 3 games. So Mahomes is a beast.
I still think Lamar.
He has the better receivers. He's a better.
Lamar still has that threat to run though. could that?
Yeah, but I think we
gives-
saw
it
later in the
gives-
season that Patrick Mahomes gained. I mean, he ran the ball a few times.
I agree with you. It takes
Especially
away.
the
It takes away that it's. I just want to talk about just something a little like circumstantial. Isn't it the most annoying thing when your team is on the 5-yard line? I'm like, oh, my quarterback's about to score a touchdown, and he runs it, and then you're like,
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Lamar Jackson. Sometimes, usually, I'm not gonna say sometimes. Most likely will take it himself.
But he also has the ability to give it off to Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, or Gus Edwards. He has 3 guys that he can give it off to.
I
And
still think
that element is the reason why I would pick Patrick Mahomes. Just
I still think more likely than not he's gonna run it though. It's
just
Lamar Jackson.
From pure skill standpoint, Patrick Mahomes is the better quarterback. He has more weapons. Tyreek Hill is one of the best and most explosive fantasy players you can draft. McCole Hardman, another great deep threat. Travis Kelce, all reliable, has like 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
Strictly with fantasy, what round do you recommend drafting these guys? Because I think they fall in the same round.
If you watch one of my podcasts, I said that I don't draft a quarterback until at least the 10th round.
And that's
I
strictly
stand by that.
strategic.
But
I
if I
agree
were
with
to
you.
draft Lamar or Patrick Mahomes, I would take both of them in the 3rd round.
3rd?
I would say 3rd
I
round.
would have said 4.
For both of them, I still say
they might not be
better.
there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think that right now, Lamar Jackson is going earlier than Patrick Mahomes. I don't know why. I think that Mahomes is going to have a better year. I think people forget that he was injured for 3 games. Really 4. I would say 3.5 because he didn't finish the full game that he got injured in. And look, I think people are forgetting about that. They're forgetting how good Mahomes is as a fantasy player and not forgetting how good he is, but forgetting that he is better than Lamar Jackson. And I think for average draft position, I'd pick Mahomes over Lamar.
All right, so next up for you guys' question, we have DeAndre Hopkins versus Tyreek Hill. And I feel very strongly about this next one. And honestly, we can get into one of these guys about a new deal that was just made up.
We can, yep.
So,
we can.
me and Michael
Tyreek
agree. We take Hill on this one. Let's get to Hopkins first.
So Hopkins signed. I'm actually gonna pull up his contract right now.
It was a whopper.
The
biggest besides a quarterback.
Biggest. I think he's making $18.8 million a year, all in with the extension. Look, it's
ridiculous.
It's a lot of money, but I want to compare it to a car. Okay, well, let's say you're going to buy a car. Okay, what do you do before you buy the car? Like, what are some things you do before you buy it?
You look at it.
You look at it. You test drive it, right?
Oh,
you test drive it to make sure that it's a good car. It's everything you like. Well, DeAndre, and like you know the car's like because you saw YouTube videos, you've seen commercials on the car.
Yeah.
You saw what it was like before, but you haven't seen what it's like when it's your car. So we've seen DeAndre Hopkins in a Houston uniform, but we haven't seen him in Arizona. We haven't test drove him in Arizona. So that's a lot of money for a guy that you haven't seen
in
an
Arizona
Arizona uniform. So part of me thinks that it's a little too early. So yeah, it's worth $54.5 million in new money or $27.25 million a year. He will also receive a $42.75 million guaranteed at signing.
For me,
he has 3 years remaining on his 5-year, $81 million contract.
For me,
it's a lot of money.
For me, Hill is not necessarily the better, but the safer bet here. There's just so much bubble wrap surrounding this pick. It's Tyreek Hill with Patrick Mahomes. That's all I can really say about it.
I agree. I
more
think
question
by
marks with Hopkins.
safety, if you want by position that they're in, I think by safety, I would almost argue DeAndre Hopkins because he's the number one clear-cut guy there, whereas Tyreek Hill has Kyrie Hilaire, Travis Kelce,
just like you were saying. I disagree.
Other players to play with.
He has never played in that Arizona offense.
I know, and look, part of me wants to say that I think Tyreek Hill just blows DeAndre Hopkins out of the water, but I don't think it's that close because I think people forget how good DeAndre Hopkins was a few years ago. We'll just have to see how he plays in an Arizona uniform, but right now, I don't think that DeAndre Hopkins is worth drafting right where he is.
All right. Sounds good, Mike. So to finish it off, we have Dalvin Cook versus Alvin Kamara. And this is something that me and Mike have talked about a lot. And I'm very interested to see Michael's answer.
Extremely strong about this one.
I go back and forth on it, but to finish off, yep, we have different ones. I am selecting Dalvin Cook.
Alvin Kamara. And it's not even close.
Talk to me.
It is not even close. Dalvin Cook is due to regress so much. Over the last 6 games.
You know
of
what,
the
Mike?
season,
You always
he
throw
has
that
10.
out. You always throw that out. Oh, he's due to regress. Any player that does really good isn't going to do even better next season. No, that doesn't mean he's going to do bad, though.
No, I don't think Cook's going to do bad, but he had 10 points per game over the last 6 games of the season. That's not running back one worthy, which is where he's being drafted right now. Kamara, over the last, I think, 12 or 11 games of the season, was playing on a torn MCL. That's nuts.
Does that make you nervous?
No, because he said that he's fully healed from that and he's a lot better.
Plenty of players have said they're fully healed from things that just want to play.
But he played through from that at a high level, and now he has a full offseason to recover.
Does that come and bite him in the ass later?
No.
That he played with that injury, and now he's going to try to play this year?
No, because I think we would have seen it bite him in the ass if he missed games because of it. He didn't. And he still played at a pretty high level with that injury. Kamara's also, I think he's in the more stable offense. I think Drew Brees is a very good quarterback that's going to be able to give him the ball and move the offense around.
A more stable offense, I agree, but I think with the loss of Diggs,
it definitely allows more touches for Cook.
I think it allows more touches.
It absolutely does.
And you were talking about that when talking about DeAndre Hopkins, saying that I'm not saying you picked DeAndre Hopkins in that circumstance, but you were saying that it's a safer bet to go with. You think a safer bet to go with Hopkins because he's the clear-cut number 1 receiver.
I just think it's different.
Not only
wide receivers though.
Not only is Cook obviously the number 1 running back, they got him and Thielen.
But they also have him and Alexander Madison in the backfield, who towards the end of the season was actually splitting 50-50 snaps with him, which is why we saw Cook's numbers go down a little bit. And I don't want to draft a guy who's trending down, where Kamara's trending up.
The injury still freaks me out. It really does. I get very nervous about drafting guys with injuries.
I get more nervous about both of them having contract issues right now.
Yes, but that's it. You know what? That's the similarity
thing
that links those two guys right now. Both are having extreme contract issues right now.
There's no guarantee that either of them is going to play. I think both of them are going to. They're just trying to get more money. I don't blame them. But look, I think Kamara also has a receiving aspect that Dalvin Cook really doesn't have. Cook can catch the ball, but Kamara is much more.
Kamara catches the ball.
Yeah.
Kamara catches the ball. Cook has
the ability to catch the ball.
Right.
Kamara makes a really good presence in the backfield when catching the ball.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like. So yeah, just to sum up fantasy, if you're still able to draft, those are our takes about how we think they're going to be placed. And just what we think about them this season fantasy-wise.
I know from doing mock drafts and from doing actual drafts, those players are situations that I've been put in. I mean, I've been put in the situation of Hopkins or Hill, Cook or Kamara. I mean, not really Lamar Mahomes because I don't draft early, but I could really see that.
These are situations that very well may happen.
Absolutely.
All right, so our final topic of the podcast, we're going to be talking about Leonard Fournette.
Yep.
So, this past Monday, Fournette was released by the Jags. What do we think? And I have some strong feelings about this, but I want you to go first.
We obviously know that Leonard Fournette is a stud running back.
Yes. Yes.
He's a beast. I mean, he's a very, very good running back.
I'm going to comment on that later. My response to that is, yeah. Okay, keep going.
But how much better does he really make this offense?
That's the question. And Mike, I think we agree on this one.
I've been preaching all offseason to avoid Tampa Bay backfield because of the uncertainty of who's going to be the lead back. It's going to be Ronald Jones, LaShawn McCoy, Keyshawn Vaughn. Who's it going to be? Now you add in Leonard Fournette, another guy
piece of the puzzle,
who's going to just throw a wrench in the entire system. Now with Fournette, you assume that he's going to be the bell cow, right? He's going to be the guy that's going to take the majority of the snaps. But Bruce Arians said that's still Ronald Jones' job.
He just said, I was just going to say, the Bucs have come out and said
Jones is still the veteran back LaShawn McCoy, who in his heyday was arguably the best running back in the league in his time. And they drafted Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round, who is a very highly skilled pass-catching running back.
If I'm a Bucs fan, I'm not crazy about this sign, and I think it tells you a lot about what the Buccaneers
Well, if I'm a Bucs fan, I'm crazy about it because you know how skilled Leonard Fournette is.
I'm not. I really am not. I'm not. The contract is $2 million plus incentives, so it's an easy cut. This is a guy that they're trying to cut, though. I'm saying he'd be an easy cut. With this Bruce Arians, running backs aren't asked to make plays like Leonard Fournette does. Bruce Arians has never run his offense like that. You just said stay away from Tampa Bay offense.
I was saying that before in my own fantasy draft when it was the 11th round. We were drafting and I didn't see Leonard Fournette get taken off the board, but then he does. in the 11th round, and I'm like, he's just sitting there. I'm like, wait, is this a joke? He's still there, so I took him because he wasn't on a team on this point. Mm-hmm. We drafted the day he got cut. And I think Tampa Bay is one of the best situations he could be put in personnel-wise, like offense-wise, and how highly skilled they are.
Like,
given the running backs, I don't think that he's going to be the lead guy until at least week 5 or 6.
The other thing, this is a loaded backfield, A, but B, it's a loaded offense.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I think that we're forgetting that as loaded as this backfield is,
the offense
there's still going to be a pass-heavy team, so the opportunity for running backs is going to be slim as is, and then you throw in the committee that is going to be the Tampa Bay backfields, and all these variables are just kind of going towards me wanting to avoid him.
He's a hard, and you're gonna love this, he's a hard-nosed back. Do you know what I mean? He kind of just stuffs right through the middle, half that dive. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He puts it right through the middle.
Another thing you have to remember is last year, who was the Jacksonville offense? It was Leonard Fournette.
It is Leonard Fournette.
Their offense, you know?
I think
that
it also
gives put in an offense where he's maybe the third option. I mean, I'd say behind Evans
and here's the thing, we'll see. We don't know.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Is Gronk gonna be number? Like, who knows? That's my point. Is like, who knows who's gonna be the third guy there? I don't even know if Fournette would thrive in being the second guy there.
Another problem that I noticed with Fournette, I think we've talked about this, is his utter inconsistency. There's been such a constant inconsistency, and which is surprising with a back of his size and his playing ability. To be honest, I think this was done for Brady. I really do think this was done for Brady. In New England, guys like LeGarrette Blount so I'll use that for an example, right? It's a safety blanket. I think that's a great comparison. We remember LeGarrette Blount way back, like when Brady was kind of taking a dip a little bit. They relied very much heavily on obviously their defense. Yep. And their running game.
And Blount led the league in touchdowns one season.
You can literally see in stats, Sony Michel's numbers at the end of the season spiked.
Yeah.
Because they realized, oh shoot, he's dipping, we need to run the ball a little bit more. And they did.
And so did James White, because, just kind of, like you're saying, that safety blanket of just being able to just dump it off.
So the Buccaneers are confident that Brady can still play, but if he can't, let's
have Leonard Fournette, like 4 running backs.
Let's put Leonard Fournette
next. We need to.
I think this, and my final thoughts on this, I think this was nothing but a reach on a guy that could be promising, but I would say this is Arians throwing something against the wall and hoping it sticks.
I think that's a really good way to put it. I think that they've kind of been doing that a few times this offseason with Tom Brady, now Leonard Fournette. I think LaShawn McCoy was another guy that they're trying to do that with. Even Josh Rosen, signing him to the practice squad. Former first-round pick, 10th pick of the draft. Exactly. I think that's kind of what it is. Look, from an actual football standpoint, $2 million is nothing.
And that's what I'm saying.
All he's going to do is help. I don't think he's going to hurt this offense. He was like a 1,300-yard rusher last year. He's a really great running back, like I said.
I just don't think they're going to be able to utilize his play style in this offense.
As much as they should.
As much as, let's say, Jacksonville, as much as Jacksonville needed him to.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
They needed him to produce. Yeah. They don't need him to produce.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're going to throw him when they feel like it.
They don't have Tom Brady. They don't have Chris Godwin. They don't have those receivers that they have in Tampa Bay.
They got nothing but a bag of chips. They got nothing, dude. You know what I mean? So that's my final thoughts on it. And the thing that I want you guys to take away from this, I believe that this is something Arians is throwing against the wall and hoping it sticks. Mike, final thoughts on this?
I kind of said it. I think from a football standpoint, I think it's a good play. I mean, why not? But from a fantasy point, I drafted Fournette, and I'm kind of wary of how he's going to perform this year. I would wait until week 4, 5, maybe even 6 to really see what's going to happen here, because I think I keep on going back to it, but especially because of, the hybrid offseason that we're having with, OTAs and no preseason, we don't have that feeling out stage of seeing what players can really produce, and signing Leonard Fournette with little days to go before the season is not going to help him out. So I think we're going to have to see what he really has later in the season.
It's going to be interesting. Mike, it's going to be an interesting season, a fun season. We're finally starting back up week 1. That wraps up for today. I'm Pat Daly signing off.
I'm Michael Quattromani signing off.
This is the 4-1 Podcast, and we'll see you next time. Yes! Let's go, dude!